We have an established program, but we have received a request by the Russian Federation to make a short statement. So I would like to invite the representative of the Russian Federation to make that statement and invite him to be brief so that the proceedings can continue as scheduled. Please.
Dear colleagues, ministers, ladies and gentlemen, in my national capacity as the special coordinator of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation on the issues of the political use of information and communication technology, so long title, I would like first to congratulate everyone with the start of the ever first and to some extent and very profound Octopus Conference 2019. It is very difficult to make a statement after Alexander. He is looks like a veteran of the cyber course in the world. He does participate much in this process, and thanks to his efforts probably and to the whole team, such conference could be undertaken. Thank you very much. Let me start just my quite short speech, as far as I understand, 7 minutes, from the words of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, his statement precisely during the 74th session. Precisely Mr. Lavrov said that last year the resolution on combating cybercrime was adopted on the General Assembly on the Russian initiative. It is important to work for achieving legally binding agreements of all aspects of the international information security. Based on that, the 73rd session of the United Nations did adopt the UN General Resolution named Countering the Use of Information Communication Technologies for Criminal Purposes. There were 36 co-sponsors, including all BRICS and Shanghai Organization countries, members. According to the draft of the resolution, member states invited the UN General Secretary to issue the report and to present that report to the 74th session. So the report was presented, and the new issue of the political use of the ICTs was included as the political agenda into the 74th session of the UN General Assembly. The first thematic debates were undertaken, but what did demonstrate all of these debates to us? Unfortunately, the world community does not have a common and unified approach to the issue of information space criminality fighting. At the international level, the situation is compounded by the lack of comprehensive international legal framework for cooperation and even a common terminology. At a legal level, relevant instruments have been developed and adopted by a number of organizations, but their capacity to deal effectively with such types of crime remain insufficient. Thematic debates did demonstrate many interesting issues, but the main problem offset that the spread of the violence of the cyber threat is growing. There are some figures. Madam General Secretary did present some figures, but based on the expert assessment, we would like to present the same one, that there are more than 40 million cyber criminals in the world. The losses of the world economy from other threats are increasing annually by $500 billion US dollars. Cyber attacks are increasing in size, sophistication, and cost. Like street crime, which historically grew in relation to population growth, we are witnessing a similar evolution of cybercrime. It is not just about more sophisticated weaponry, it is much about the growing number of human and digital targets. According to the USA research company Cybersecurity Ventures, the worldwide spending on information security will reach $124 billion by 2021. If at the end of 2016 our business fell victim to ransomware attack every 40 seconds, in 2019 it will rise to every 14 seconds and will reach every 11 seconds by 2021. Disaster. All of that means that the old rules of the jungle, survival of the fittest and might is right, are still with us, by the way, in the information space. There was some mentioning regarding the modern technologies that are widely used in the world. That is true. Artificial intelligence, identity management, biometrics, Internet of Things, industrial Internet, digital economy. But what does unite all of these issues? Global peaceful use of the modern ICT technologies is a hostage to the absence of international accepted United Nations legal treaty in cybercrime. Unfortunately, that is our reality. So based on that, Russian Federation today with their co-sponsors did present on the 74th session the resolution with the name of that the countering the use of information and communication technologies for criminal purposes. That resolution was adopted 2 days ago. Resolution does have 47 co-sponsors. That is the voting results of that. In favor, that was 88, against 58, abstention 34. Unfortunately, the majority of European countries did vote against, so that is the reality. What is the next step that should be just undertaken due to this fact? Based on that, the main core of the Russian resolution, together with the Chinese partners and many others, we would like to call upon to establish an ad hoc committee on the development of a universal tool in this area. If hypothetically suppose that we are studying our convention, I completely agree with the words said by Madam Secretary General of Council of Europe that the Budapest Convention is one of the important instruments that does have the world in this sphere. So, while elaborating the new UN just legal treaties, there is no reasonable that the UN community should put just on the main foundation of that one of the achievements of the Council of Europe Convention on Cybercrime. Together with the Council of Europe Personal Data Protection Convention and together with the UN Convention against Transnational Organized Crime and some Anti-Terrorist Convention. That means that the world can start their job not from zero, not from the white paper, and precisely for the achievements that just humanity does have in this area. That is everything. Probably less than 7 minutes. I just did my best. The last issue, together with the just. Today, the very respectable edition, the Washington Post, did just edit the article saying that the UN does support the activity in cybersphere. That is a very good article. You can read it, quite just too complicated sometimes to understand. But I did like, in commas, the outcome of this article. The main conclusion of that is that the resolution is for the changing the manpower in the internet. But in this case, I've got a question. Who does monitor the internet right now? Thank you very much. Thank you, Court.
Thank you, Mr. Chenyukin. I understand that the Executive Secretary of the TCY would like to make a comment in response. Alexander, please.
Thank you. Ernest, you forgot something. You didn't talk about Article 32. 15 years ago, in the very first Octopus conference, our debate on that started, and every year, every time we have Octopus, it's a ritual, and now you're missing out on that, so I have to bring it up. The UN started to discuss the question of a UN treaty on cybercrime 30 years ago. I happened to be there. I've been in the system for quite a while. When the preparations took place for the United Nations Crime Congress in Cuba, the question of cybercrime was on the agenda, and there was no consensus. There was a call for technical assistance, capacity building, but there was no consensus. 30 years ago, there was no consensus in 2010. There was no consensus in 2005 in Bangkok. There was no consensus in 2010 in Salvador and Brazil in the Crime Congress. And The results of the vote that you just put on the screen, of the third committee vote, there will still be a plenary vote, also show that there's no consensus. We have limited time, but just a few questions for further discussions in the breaks and over the reception maybe tonight. The resolution was proposed by Russia and then co-sponsored by China, North Korea, Myanmar, Nicaragua, Belarus and Venezuela. And if work on a new treaty will indeed go ahead, what can we expect in terms of rule of law and human rights safeguards? When negotiating the protocol to the Budapest Convention, even this morning, and when assisting countries worldwide to develop legislation, we focus on rule of law conditions and safeguards, and we support also data protection legislation, as the minister from Gambia also explained earlier this afternoon. So what can we expect in terms of rule of law safeguards? And there are some reports, they may be wrong, but there are some reports that there is some cybercrime coming from some of these countries that are proposing a new treaty on cybercrime. If such a treaty were then in place, would the level of cybercrime be dramatically reduced from these countries? Would there be an explosion of cooperation with these countries once there is a new treaty? And then why would a treaty be needed anyway to do that? The third point that I want to make is that when you talk to practitioners from around the world, they don't necessarily see the need for a new treaty. They want resources, skills and domestic powers to investigate. And they want to cooperate with the private sector. This is what we are addressing in the protocol to the Budapest Convention, the cooperation with the private sector. Last week there was another workshop in New York, and a representative from the Russian Federation made it very clear, yet you cannot cooperate with service providers directly in the Russian Federations. But Russian law enforcement is allowed to cooperate directly with service providers in other countries. So what does this mean for a future treaty? In what way will this take us forward in a future treaty? And then a very important point that I would like to raise is that in the UN, in crime matters, the UN has always proceeded by consensus. It has been frustrating sometimes, but it has also yielded some very good results in the form of the UN Convention on Organized Crime, the Anti-Corruption Convention, and so on. And the fact is there is no consensus on a new treaty, and many see great risks. And I'm wondering whether this is the reason also why it was moved from Vienna to New York. And in fact, the question now is, doesn't this then also lead to greater international division? Does this lead to greater polarization internationally when it comes to cybercrime matters? Will we repeat the experience that happened in 2012 when the international telecommunication regulations were adopted in Dubai? After very controversial discussions in a very strange way when those were adopted, where you now have a split in the world, where 91 countries have become parties through an automatic process, ipso facto, still wonder what it means, and the rest of the world is not acceding to that. That's the question. Will we have a risk of such a split also in the future if we do not proceed by consensus? Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander. Thank you, Alexander. I've received 3 requests to the floor, which I intend to give before the coffee break and then stop. The requests have been made by the Dominican Republic, the European Union and the United States, and therefore I first give the floor to the representative of the Dominican Republic.
Gracias, Jan, y buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Claudio Peguero, de la Policía Nacional de República Dominicana, y quería solamente hacer un breve comentario, agradecer las presentaciones que se han hecho hasta ahora y a la del delegado de la Federación Rusa igualmente. Solo comentar que si bien es cierto que hay muchas oportunidades de mejora, que hay muchos temas tanto en ciberdelito como en ciberseguridad que podríamos estar haciendo mejor, me gustaría llamar la atención sobre un detalle que es común a todos los instrumentos internacionales y a todos los convenios. El Convenio de Budapest específicamente se comenzó a negociar, o la idea nace en 1991, hace 28 años. Se comienza se abre a la firma en el 2001, hace 18 años, y entra en vigor en 2004, hace 15 años. En 15 años de su entrada en vigor, tenemos 64 Estados miembros y tenemos una cierta tracción de funcionamiento con el instrumento. Mi única preocupación con reinventar la rueda, y dice mi colega Ernest Chernukin que hace falta un instrumento global o internacional y hacen falta definiciones comunes, y yo pienso que eso es ambas cosas es lo que hace el Convenio de Budapest, y es desde su concepción y su nacimiento ha sido un instrumento global. Pero lo más importante de todo es que como practicante, hoy nosotros tenemos víctimas que exigen una respuesta del sistema de justicia criminal. Hoy nosotros, el sistema de justicia criminal, necesita accesar a la evidencia que está fuera de nuestro control y jurisdicción para poder dar una respuesta a esas víctimas. Entonces, mientras negociamos instrumentos nuevos, se está generando impunidad. Entonces, necesitamos hoy dar una respuesta, trabajar con lo que tenemos, mejorar lo que tenemos, aunque querramos hacer algo nuevo y mejor, pero no podemos hacerlo a expensas de dejar lo que estamos haciendo ahora, porque el problema existe hoy y solo va a crecer. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Claudio. I would now like to give the floor to the representative of the European Union.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, thank you to the Council of Europe for organizing the Octopus Conference once again. Already with the interventions that we had until now, it's inspiring to see the level of commitment which we share to protect the global open internet we believe in. The global open internet which has become the backbone of our societies and offers us the platform that drives connectivity and economic growth. And it's not only natural that if we value the open internet and we want to ensure its security and we want to work together to fight against the threats that can hamper the added value that cyberspace can bring to our lives collectively. Therefore, the common endeavour during these days in front of us to find solutions to effectively fight cybercrime, it's very valuable, and the fact that we all together here in this room, almost all together, we support the Budapest Convention as the instrument that enables us to share our experiences, to build national criminal laws which are technology neutral and can stand the challenges of the threats that we are facing, and provides effective mechanisms for international cooperation, is already a very good starting point. When it comes to alternative solutions, Alexander stressed the lack of consensus for a possible new instrument to be negotiated. I would like to complement that by saying that consensus exists. It's very clear. All United Nations meetings I have been part in have clearly delivered consensus on the need for capacity building, on the need to have criminal justice systems able to investigate, prosecute and adjudicate cybercrime. We need to focus our efforts to build skills in law enforcement, in judicial authorities, to provide them with the tools they need to investigate, prosecute and adjudicate cybercrime. Indeed, if a negotiation on a new instrument was to be launched in the United Nations or in another fora, we agree that it would be divisive. Consensus among experts, if some of you have been part of the discussions of the Intergovernmental Expert Group that meets under the aegis of the UNODC in Vienna every year, well, those discussions have a clear outcome. There is no consensus on the need of a new international instrument. And even among the supporters of that instrument, we see that the scope and the objectives that such an instrument should pursue are not clear, are not shared. We risk to engulf ourselves into lengthy discussions that will deliver an instrument which will have lower standards than what we have today. Instead of being an opportunity for all countries to come together and raise their standards, this would most probably bring to lowering our standards in fighting cybercrime and increase the digital divide. We have already a place in the UN where common challenges and common solutions are being discussed. The Intergovernmental Expert Group. That group is delivering. Again, by consensus, the UN Crime Commission, Commission for Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice, adopted a resolution in May this year, where the work of that group is clearly valued, and we all agreed in that context that the group is delivering the results. However, that group will take the international cooperation matters under discussions only the coming year. So we believe it's at least premature to start discussions on a new instrument. Those are the reasons that led the European Union member states and many other countries to vote against the Russian resolution in New York. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excuse me. And the last statement before the break is the United States, please.
Thank you, Chairman. On behalf of the U.S., I would like to state that we share the regret regarding the outcome of Monday's vote in the Third Committee, as we too feel that a new process will distract from ongoing and productive efforts to combat cybercrime. We do note that the decision in the Third Committee is not the final word, and we ask countries that voted in favor of or abstained from the resolution to consider changing their vote to against when the General Assembly considers it in mid-December. Cybercrime is occurring in every country right now. Countries around the world need to be building their legal and operational frameworks for effectively combating cybercrime right now. And we fear that this initiative will cause a number of countries to instead delay essential actions and devote their efforts to participating in the new negotiations and awaiting the outcome before revising their legal frameworks. There is reason to believe that their wait will be in vain, precisely because, as others have said, there is no consensus regarding the need for or the objectives of a new UN convention, as a result of which there will be significant obstacles in reaching agreement, or, as has also been said, the standards that result will not be equal to the task. Countries that wait will, to their detriment and to the detriment of the effectiveness of our common efforts, miss opportunities to enact laws they need, gain operational experience they need, and enter into a smoothly functioning community of experts and a capacity-building support mechanism that has been established and nourished by the Council of Europe. In short, the Budapest Convention has proven its worth time and again, and we should be focused on investing in this institution by growing the community and developing new strategies to address important challenges here. Similarly, we think the work of the UN should focus on capacity building efforts of the UN ODC Global Program on Cybercrime and on the ongoing work of the UN Intergovernmental Expert Group, which is conducting a study on the best way to advance in this area, rather than now leaping to the commencement of a UN convention. In closing, I'd like to reiterate the commitment of the United States to the Budapest Convention and its capacity building and operational networks. We welcome nations across the world to join us in its ongoing beneficial efforts to combat cybercrime. Thank you.